Hebrews, Hebrews, Hebrews. This is our Prophets of Awakening. This is our evening Shabbat class, the 21st of March 2026. Okay, I'll be reading out of the book of Jasher, chapter 37 for my scripture reading. Okay, you can go to our YouTube channel, the Prophets of Awakening. Check out our videos. We have over 1,000 or so videos that you can look at, examine, get the meat out, get a better understanding. These videos will lead you to the truth of the Holy Scriptures. And if you like what you're hearing and receiving, I'm asking you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It would be greatly appreciated. We have our Cash App at the bottom of the screen for those that want to support this channel. That too would be greatly appreciated. Okay. For those that don't know, this is a non-Messianic channel. We deal with the Tanakh and the Torah. Tanakh being the Old Testament, so-called Book of Remembrance, and the Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. They consist of our laws, our statutes, our judgments, our way of life that was given to Moses by our Savior and our Redeemer and our Deliverer, the Lord of hosts. This channel was created to aid and assist all Hebrews who are waking up in these last days to their true identity and also understanding who their true Savior and Redeemer truly is, okay? I want to say shalom and welcome to everyone to this channel, and welcome to our evening Shabbat class. We're going to do our normal, which is a moment of silence, prayer, Psalms. We have some current events, some need-to-know information. Then we'll open it up for anybody with questions, any comments, dialogue, or testimony. Then we'll go into our topic for discussion, which is the United States and gave Iran an ultimatum, 72-hour ultimatum. So we're going to deal with that. And then, like I said, I'll be reading out of the book of Joshua, chapter 37. We read it and then break it down. Then we'll pick a scripture and we'll close the Sabbath out. Okay. This moment of silence is for the Lord of hosts and all that he's doing to bring about our prophesied deliverance in these last days. Okay. Oh Lord, we come before thee at this time that you have set apart for your beginning of your Shabbat day that you have given unto us for rest. And we're thankful for the knowledge and the understanding that you have given us up until this point. And we seek thy face on this Sabbath, that you shower us with peace and enlightenment and a sense of togetherness. Oh Lord, we see that hand in the affairs of the world, and we know and understand that what you have spoken in the past will surely come to pass. Turn not thy face from us, but hearken unto this plea. Hearken, O Lord, and do. Okay, all praises unto you. Okay, and with that being said, I'm going to read a song. Okay. Okay. The psalm is Psalms 33. Okay, I'll read Psalm 33. It's praise to the Lord for his creation. Say, rejoice in the Lord, O ye righteous, for praise is comely for the upright. Praise the Lord with the harp. Sing unto him with the pastry and the instruments of 10 strings. Sing unto him a new song. Play skillfully with a loud voice. For the word of the Lord is right, and all his works are done in truth. He loveth righteousness and judgment. The earth is full of his goodness, the goodness of the Lord. By the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and all the host of them. By the breath of his mouth he gathereth the waters of the sea together as a heap. He layeth up the depths in storehouses. Let all the earth fear the Lord, and let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. For he spake, and it was done. He commanded, and it was fast. The Lord bringeth the counsel of the heathen to naught. He maketh the devices of the people of none effect. The counsel of the Lord standeth forever. The thoughts of his heart to all generations. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people, excuse me, whom he hath chosen for his own inheritance. The Lord looketh from the heavens, and he beholdeth all the sons of men. From the place of his habitation He looketh upon all the inhabitants of the earth. He fashioneth their hearts alike, considereth all their works. There is no king saved by the multitude of a host. A mighty man is not delivered by much strength. A horse is a vain thing for safety. Neither shall he deliver any by his great strength. Behold, the eye of the Lord is upon them that fear him, upon them that hope in his mercy, to deliver their soul from death and to keep them alive in famine. Our souls waited for the Lord. He is our help and our shield. For our heart shall rejoice in him, because ye have trusted in his holy name. Let thy mercy, O Lord, be upon us, according to as we hope in thee. So anybody got any comments on that? Okay. So one of the things I want to shine light on is, let me get it. I just slipped my mind. Yeah, let me get up here. See, I was telling you how what they did was just took the characteristics of the Lord of hosts and put them on JC. And this is an example right here, verse 6. So it tells us in John, in the beginning was the word, and was nothing wasn't created or formed, or it was by him. But we see right here in verse 6 of chapter Psalm 33, by the word of the Lord were the heavens made. We know who the Lord is, and all the host of them, that's including the serpent, Lucifer, says, by the word of the Lord were all the heavens made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. And so they took this, put it on JC over in New Testament. Okay. Anybody got anything else? Okay. So with that being said, we're gonna go to our current events. Let's see what I got. Okay.
Good evening, I'm Jack Keane, and tonight we're following a rapidly escalating geopolitical story that's sending shockwaves across Washington, Moscow, and capitals around the world. Let's get straight to it. Donald Trump appears to be under mounting pressure as Vladimir Putin has now publicly escalated tensions, effectively putting forward a stark and highly controversial ultimatum. According to new reporting, Putin has acknowledged that Russia has been sharing intelligence with Iran, intelligence that could be used to target American forces and interests in the Middle East. But here's the twist. Putin says he's willing to stop if the United States pulls its support for Ukraine. That's the deal on the table. Now, at the Pentagon level, U.S. military officials are reportedly rejecting this outright. But notably, Donald Trump himself has not publicly commented. That silence is fueling deep chinta, not just in Washington, but among allies worldwide, about whether this is something Trump is actually considering behind closed doors. Let's call this what it is, a classic quid pro quo. And if there's one thing we know about Donald Trump, it's that he's no stranger to transactional politics. But critics argue this is different. This isn't about politics as usual. This is about national security, global alliances, and the safety of American troops. According to sources familiar with the discussions, the proposal was reportedly delivered through Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev to Trump's representatives, including Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, during meetings late last week. The terms Russia halts intelligence sharing with Iran, potentially preventing attacks on U.S. forces in exchange for the U.S. cutting off intelligence support to Ukraine. European diplomats are sounding the alarm tonight. They fear this move is designed to fracture the transatlantic alliance, drive a wedge between the United States and Europe at a critical moment. And then there's Donald Trump's response, or at least what he chose to focus on publicly. Instead of addressing the Putin proposal directly, Trump took aim at NATO. In a fiery statement, he called the alliance a paper tiger without the United States, accusing European allies of cowardice and unwillingness to act, particularly in relation to Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. That rhetoric is raising eyebrows and concerns about America's role on the global stage. Meanwhile, the economic fallout is already beginning to take shape. Markets are reacting sharply. Investors are now betting that U.S. inflation could surge above 5% over the next year. Interest rate cuts off the table for now. In fact, analysts are warning of possible rate hikes instead. And then there's oil. Prices are climbing fast, with projections suggesting crude could hit $180 or even $200 a barrel. That's not just a headline number. That hits consumers directly at the gas pump, in shipping costs, in food prices. This is no longer a distant geopolitical issue. It's hitting home. At the same time, reports indicate that the Trump administration is moving additional troops into the Middle East. Budgets. And now, the prospect of a costly foreign conflict layered on top of existing economic challenges. Small business owners are bracing for impact. Farmers are warning about rising fertilizer costs. Supply chains are once again under strain. And for military families, there's another concern, the possibility of boots on the ground. Administration officials insist that any troop movements are about maintaining leverage and flexibility, not necessarily signaling imminent invasion. But the uncertainty remains. And uncertainty in moments like this can be just as destabilizing as action. Politically, this is also shaping up to be a defining issue. Across the country, candidates are being asked where they stand, not just on the war itself, but on broader questions of leadership, accountability, and the role of Congress in authorizing military action. Some are calling for a reassertion of constitutional checks and balances, arguing that decisions of this magnitude require broader consensus and oversight. Others are standing firmly behind the administration, emphasizing strength, deterrence, and the need to confront adversaries decisively. But one thing is clear, this situation is evolving rapidly. We are looking at a complex web of military strategy, diplomatic maneuvering, economic consequences, and political implications, all unfolding in real time. And at the center of it all is a high-stakes question. What comes next? Will diplomacy prevail? Will tensions escalate further? And how will decisions made in the coming days shape not just this conflict, but the global order moving forward?
Okay, any comments on that? Anybody got anything? Okay, here we go. Look at this. Yeah, we was just talking about how they setting everything up to attack the Al-Aqsa. Well, check this out. Okay.
Hezbollah and Iran have targeted several cities across southern and northern Israel. The Israeli military says an Iranian missile has hit Dimona in southern Israel. The city is home to Israel's central nuclear facility. At least 47 people have been injured in the attack. Hezbollah also claimed responsibility for an attack on a residential building in the city of Ma'alot Tashina in the north. Now, those attacks come after Iran reported its Natanz nuclear facility was attacked on Saturday. The United Nations nuclear watchdog has called for military restraint to avoid the risk of a radiation leak in Iran. Israel claims it wasn't involved in the attack. Natanz is Iran's largest nuclear plant and central to its uranium enrichment program. It's also one of the sites that the United States targeted in June last year. And US Central Command, meanwhile, claims that Iran's ability to attack ships in the Strait of Hormuz has been, quote unquote, degraded. It says strikes this week targeted an underground Iranian facility used to store anti-ship cruise missiles and other weapons. Iran's effective closure of the strait has paralyzed part of the global energy trade, forcing a surge in oil and gas prices. Now, we are reporting from Washington, Tehran, Baghdad, and Ramallah in the occupied West Bank, and that is where Noor Ode joins us from. Now, what do we know about this attack on Dimona here? You know, it is the heart of the Israeli nuclear program, is it not?
It sure is, and even taking photographs in the vicinity of the city, Rashad, is not allowed. This is a well-guarded city, home to Israel's it was at least most guarded secret its nuclear military grade nuclear capabilities. In any case, what we know and what has been cleared by the military censor is that there were 3 different impact sites in Dimona. One 3-story building has collapsed, and there were several fires reported. The paramedics have reported 47 people injured. One 10-year-old boy seems to be suffering from several shrapnel wounds, and his condition is being described as critical but stable. This is not the first time that Dimona was targeted, but it certainly is the first time that we see such extensive damage to the point where videos were immediately seen on social media, posted by eyewitnesses, by the residents of the city. So that's the information that we know about what happened, that was cleared again by the military censor.
Okay. Anybody have any feedback on that? Anybody familiar with Dimona? Yeah, they got this a group of people that went over there, Black Israelites. They in Dimona. And I was just talking about this, how that they gave them somewhere to live, but they gave them land that was near this nuclear site. And now they Iran shooting off missiles. The missiles hitting that Dimona. You think that's an accident? Okay. So with that being said, I'm gonna go to our need to know information. Okay. This is just some need to know facts.
There, etched into stone, painted on the walls of ancient cities, and written down by historians who lived thousands of years ago. Yet over time, those details fade and are replaced by simpler stories that leave entire chapters of history behind. When most people think about Iran's past, they imagine Persia, powerful empires, legendary conquerors, vast trade routes, and magnificent palaces rising from the desert. And while that picture is not entirely wrong, it leaves out a crucial part of that history that most people never hear about. Long before the slave trade ever reached the region, Black people were already living in what is now Iran. They were not brought there as cargo or property. They were part of the land itself and connected to some of the earliest civilizations that developed there. Their presence appears in ancient artwork, preserved carvings, and historical records written long before. Modern debates about race and history existed. Today, when people hear about Black Iranians, most of them assume that they came from Africans who were enslaved and transported through the Arab slave trade. And while that chapter of history is real and its consequences were devastating, it is only one part of a much larger story. The deeper history stretches back thousands of years earlier to an ancient civilization known as Elam. In southwestern Iran, communities were already building cities and shaping early society, while much of the world was still learning the basics of agriculture. Archaeologists have uncovered artifacts from this civilization. Historians have documented its people, and many of those discoveries now sit in museums around the world. In this video, we will follow that evidence and explore a story that is far older and far more complex than most people have ever been told. Before we go any further, if you want to stay updated as we continue uncovering buried histories like this one, join our WhatsApp community through the link in the description below. There you will find a space for discussion, future videos, and the kind of conversation that mainstream platforms rarely make room for. Now let us go back to the beginning.
When your teen joins TikTok, they're protected with over 50 preset safety and
Actually, there are 2 layers to the Black presence in Iran, but most people only know about one. The first historical people inhabiting what we now call Iran were the Negroid Black Elamites. The Elamites were a pre-Iranian civilization based in southwestern Iran in the region known today as Khuzestan, dating back thousands of years before the slave trade even began. Their cities centered on Susa and Shush, places that appear in some of the oldest written records in human history. And the artwork they left behind, carved steles and reliefs, depicts dark-skinned people, not as visitors, not as servants, as the people who built the civilization itself. Researchers have pointed to these carved steles as direct visual evidence of a Black population that was indigenous to the region, not imported into it. The Black presence in Iran is not a story that begins with a ship crossing the ocean. It begins with people who were already home. When archaeologists began excavating Susa, what they found did not fit neatly into the story that had already been written about the ancient world. Terracotta figurines and painted reliefs showed faces with dark complexions and textured hair. A spinning woman carved in stone between 800 and 600 BC, now housed in the Louvre in Paris, displays features that any ancient Greek observer would have recognized immediately. The Greeks and Romans used the term Ethiopian, derived from a phrase meaning burnt face, as a broad descriptor for dark-skinned populations across a wide geographic range. When Herodotus, writing in the 500s BC, described parts of the Persian Empire as home to Ethiopians, he was not describing recent arrivals, been there for generations, possibly for millennia. Strabo, writing around 64 BC, made the same observation, noting that the Persian population was partly what he called Ethiop, meaning black. These accounts were written centuries before the Indian Ocean slave trade reached its peak. They describe a black presence in Persia that had nothing to do with bondage. This is a critical distinction because it dismantles the assumption that every black person outside of Africa must be a descendant of the slave trade. Africans are the first people on this planet, and as such, they would have wandered out and settled down. Where they had large concentrations and less interaction with outside peoples, the populations remained fairly dark. Historical research on Afro-Iranians acknowledges this directly, noting that some came as immigrants throughout many millennia, not just through the slave trade. The Ajam Media Collective has argued that framing black presence in Iran as exclusively a product of the slave trade reflects a habit of treating African migration as something that only ever happened in chains. Southwestern Iran and ancient Mesopotamia were crossroads of early human migration, and the communities that formed there did not need a slave ship to explain their presence. They were simply the people who had always been there. The Elamite civilization was contemporaneous with ancient Sumer and early Egypt. Their kings built great ziggurats, including the one at Shogazambil in Khuzestan, that still stands today as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Their scribes developed one of the earliest writing systems in the ancient world. They were not peripheral people. They were among the founders of human civilization in that part of the world. Yet the full story of who they were and what they looked like has been quietly set aside in the popular telling of ancient history for a very long time. Their suffering was not. The British Empire eventually pressured Iran to end the trade, and formal abolition came in the 1920s. But abolition did not mean recognition, and it certainly did not mean justice. The descendants of those enslaved people remained in the South, rooted in communities along the Hormozgan and Khuzestan coasts, and the culture they built there survived even when their history was not acknowledged. In cities like Bandar Abbas, the African influence on local music, food, and daily life is unmistakable. The Bandari musical tradition, with its percussion-driven rhythms and ceremonial dances, carries the memory of East Africa in every beat. It is a living record of people who were never given the chance to tell their own story in words. The Ajam Media Collective has described Bandari music as one of the clearest surviving expressions of African cultural memory in Iran, a tradition that has persisted across generations precisely because it was passed down through communities rather than through institutions that might have suppressed it. It is a form of resistance that does not announce itself as resistance. It simply endures. But that heritage has been systematically denied. In Iran's larger cities, people often explain the darker complexions of southern Iranians as simply a result of the sun or the heat of the region. Civilization had already left its mark thousands of years before. That context does not soften what the slave trade was. Nothing could. But it deepens the injustice of it because it means the communities that were built from that trade were denied not just their freedom and their labor, but a connection to a far older history that was already theirs by right.
Okay, any comments on that? So we understand that Persia and the Iranians are the same people. And like I said before, Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes, from understanding the truth from what this guy was just telling you, they were black men. And then you would wonder why the Lord of hosts would use them to free the Israelites. Okay. Matter of fact, they come from Shem's lineage. Like he said earlier, they derive from Edom, which is one of the 5 sons of Shem. Anybody got anything?
Shalom, Shalom, Shalom. I just have a comment that it makes sense. Because what we saw, and they still want to say that the skin was, got that way from the heat, but not all of them could have got that way from the heat like that. Shalom.
Exactly right. Well, the regions. I mean, it's as if there ain't no black folks there when the whole continent of people are black. So that's a disgrace, really, on your intellect for them to even say that. But yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and go to our topic for we're gonna open up questions and comments and dialogue. Anybody got anything they want to talk about they heard on this line or on one of the classes or in their research? Anybody got anything?
Shalom, brother. Shalom, everyone. Um, they were talking about on Al Jazeera, that news, how Netanyahu was collecting up all the media, journalists and stuff, not letting them report certain things. And then they were doing the same thing in Iran too, with their journalists too. Shalom.
Okay. Yeah, so that might explain why they got a blackout on him, saying that he's dead. But yeah. Anybody else got anything? Okay. Everybody good. So with that being said, play this right here and then we'll go to our topic for discussion. Here we go. I'm playing this because of like I said, they setting the narrative up for this Iraq Hamas to be bombed. We got another one right here. I talked about it yesterday and I think a little bit this morning, but here go another one. They setting the narrative. Okay.
A large-scale attack occurred in Jerusalem in the early hours of local time after 80 hypersonic missiles were reportedly launched and struck several strategic points in the area. Decisive points. The most serious impact of the attack was the partial collapse of the Western Wall, a major center of Jewish worship by some Asia. Local authorities stated that at least 820 residents were seriously injured by the explosions and falling debris around the site and Open Bosen Gate. According to initial reports from security sources, the waves of attacks occurred in a relatively short period of time in a layered pattern that made it difficult for air defense systems to effectively intercept them. Several missiles reportedly penetrated defenses and directly struck densely populated areas around the old city, including religious complexes and main access points usually busy with pilgrims. Repeated large explosions were heard, causing widespread panic among residents on Nidanas. Rescue teams and the military were immediately deployed to the affected areas minutes after the first attack was detected. The primary focus of the evacuation was around the Western Wall, where many victims were buried under the rubble of large stones that collapsed under the pressure of the blast wave. The evacuation process was difficult because the collapsed ancient stone structure created heavy and unstable debris, slowing the search for victims still trapped. Preliminary data from emergency services indicates that most of the victims suffered injuries from falling debris, minor to moderate burns, and shockwave injuries. Hospitals in the Jerusalem area were reportedly quickly filled, forcing authorities to open additional emergency treatment centers at several locations to accommodate the surge. Several critically ill patients were immediately transferred to other medical facilities outside the city using military-secured emergency routes on maximum protection. Furthermore, possible disruptions in communication and coordination between defense units are being investigated. Military authorities are currently conducting a thorough investigation to identify weaknesses in the defense system.
So, like I said, now today, parts of the Western Wall didn't fail. Yesterday, they missed the Al-Aqsa Mosque, like you said, by meters. And then today now, the Western Wall been hit. So they're building up to it. Okay. Anybody got anything? Okay. Here we go. This okay, yeah. We got a topic for discussion. Okay.
Right now, something is unfolding in a 21-mile strip of water that could rewrite the economics of your daily life. And most Americans still don't fully understand what's actually happening. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow bottleneck between Iran and Oman. 20 million barrels of oil pass through it every single day, on roughly 20% of all global seaborne oil trade. And as of this moment, Iran has declared that strait closed, and its Revolutionary Guard has promised to set ablaze any vessel that dares attempt a crossing. This didn't come out of nowhere. On February 28, 2026, the United States launched Operation Epic Fury, a full air and maritime campaign targeting Iranian command centers, ballistic missile sites, naval ships, submarines, and military airfields. Washington went in hard, and Iran struck back, not with a press release, but with drones, missiles, and sea mines against commercial shipping. Oil prices have surged more than 40% since the war began, from around $65 a barrel before the conflict to over $105 today. California's gasoline prices have already broken through $5 per gallon, and that's just the beginning. Here's what the mainstream conversation keeps missing. The old playbook from the 1980s tanker war, convoy escorts, reflagging, a large frigate fleet simply is not available in 2026. The world has changed, the US has changed, and Iran, despite taking significant military losses, has not folded. France has said it will never participate in operations to open the strait under the current conditions. The EU foreign policy chief bluntly stated, "This is not Europe's war." So America finds itself largely alone, standing at the mouth of a waterway that doesn't just carry oil. More than $500 billion in oil and gas flows through the Hormuz corridor annually. Shut that down long enough, and you're not talking about a regional crisis anymore. You're talking about a global economic rupture, inflation, supply chain collapse, and energy poverty hitting nations from Tokyo to Berlin to right here at home. The question Washington refuses to answer honestly is this: was the cost of this confrontation ever truly calculated? And who in the end is going to pay it? Let me take you back to February 27th, 2026, just one day before the bombs started falling. Oman's foreign minister, Badr al-Busaidi, stood in front of cameras and told the world that a breakthrough had been reached, that Iran had agreed to never stockpile enriched uranium, had agreed to full verification by the International Atomic Energy Agency, and had agreed to irreversibly downgrade its entire enriched uranium stockpile to the lowest level possible. He said peace was, in his exact words, within reach. Talks were scheduled to resume on March 2nd. Then, on February 28th, the bombs fell anyway. And that moment right there, that decision to strike even as diplomacy was actively producing results, is the thread you have to pull if you want to understand everything that has unfolded since. Operation Epic Fury, as it was officially named, or Operation Lion's Roar, depending on which briefing you read, opened with a coordinated American and Israeli strike campaign designed to decapitate Iran's senior leadership, while simultaneously degrading its missile infrastructure, its launch systems, and its air defenses.
Within hours, Tehran began retaliating not just at American targets inside Iran's neighborhood, but across the entire Gulf region. And what followed was not a short, clean, surgical operation. What followed was the opening chapter of what is shaping up to be the most consequential military conflict the United States has been involved in since Iraq, with the critical difference that this time the adversary has real teeth, a real navy, real missiles, and a real strategy. Now, Washington's public narrative has been triumphalist from day one. Secretary Pete Hegseth stood at MacDill Air Force Base and declared that American forces had delivered nothing short of devastating precise strikes against Iran's military. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper confirmed that over 30 Iranian ships had been sunk, that ballistic missile attacks had decreased by 90% since the first day, and that drone attacks had dropped by 83%. And look, I'm not disputing those numbers. The American military is extraordinarily lethal at the conventional kinetic level. Nobody does that better. The question was never whether the United States could blow things up inside Iran. The question was always, what happens after? What does Iran do when it has nothing left to lose? And the answer to that question has been playing out in real time in a way that the victory press conferences simply are not capturing, because here is what is actually happening on the ground, or rather on the water. Tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz dropped approximately 70% from the start of hostilities. 70%. Let that number sit with you for a moment. The Strait of Hormuz is not some abstract geopolitical pressure point. It is the vein through which the global economy pumps its blood. When you cut that flow by 70%, you are not just creating a crisis in energy markets. You are reshaping the cost of everything. Every manufactured good that gets shipped, every barrel of fuel that powers a cargo plane, a container ship, a tractor on an American farm. The ripple effects of a 70% reduction in Hormuz traffic don't stay in the Middle East. They show up at your gas station, at your grocery store, in your utility bill, and they do it fast. By March 8th, Brent crude had broken through $100 a barrel, peaking near $126 before settling back around $100 by mid-March. The economic pain was already real and already widespread. And this is the part of the story that the conventional military briefings consistently fail to address, because military success and strategic success are two entirely different things. You can win every tactical engagement on the battlefield and still lose the war strategically. In fact, there is a compelling argument that is exactly what is happening here. Think about the sequencing for a moment. One strategic analyst writing for a major defense publication put it this way: the United States is prosecuting this war with only one instrument of national power, military force, while Iran is using all 5 instruments simultaneously: military force, economic pressure, diplomatic maneuvering, information warfare, and proxy networks that stretch from Lebanon to Iraq to Yemen. Iran is not fighting this war the way America fights wars. Iran is fighting it the way a country fights when it understands that survival is the objective, and that survival does not require winning every battle. It requires making the cost of continuing so unbearable that the other side eventually blinks. And the cost has been real on the American side, too, in ways that official briefings have been careful to minimize. 13 American service members have been killed in Operation Epic Fury. An Iranian drone attack at Port Shuaibah in Kuwait killed 6 Americans on March 1st alone. Names like Major Jeffrey O'Brien, Chief Warrant Officer Robert Marzan, Captain Cody Cork, Sergeant First Class Nicole Amer. Real people, real families, real American lives. Another U.S. service member was killed in a strike on Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia on March 8th. 6 more died when a KC-135 aerial refueling aircraft crashed over western Iraq on March 12th. Around 140 American military personnel have been wounded, 8 of them with severe injuries. Now, in the context of a massive military campaign, those numbers may seem manageable, but the significance is not just numerical. The significance is in what these losses reveal about Iran's targeting strategy and its effectiveness. assemble simply did not materialize in the way the playbook assumed it would. And this is not a minor footnote. When you are trying to secure a global waterway, the refusal of your traditional allies to participate tells you something important about how the world beyond Washington's Beltway is reading this conflict. Now, the official U.S. military narrative has emphasized the degradation of Iran's capability with considerable fanfare. CENTCOM declared full air superiority over Iran and claimed that the Strait of Hormuz had been secured as a transit corridor for international shipping. And indeed, the raw numbers of Iranian military assets destroyed are genuinely staggering. Over 100 Iranian naval vessels sunk or destroyed, 70% of Iran's missile launchers rendered inoperable, the nuclear facilities at Natanz damaged, Fordo left inoperable. On the purely military ledger, the United States and Israel have inflicted enormous damage. The question is whether that damage has produced the strategic outcome that was promised, or whether it has produced something far more complicated. Consider the leadership question. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed in the opening strikes, triggering a constitutional crisis inside Iran. An interim leadership council was established on March 1st. By March 8th, Mojtaba Khamenei, the Supreme Leader's son, had been elected as the new Supreme Leader. Think about what that means for a moment. The United States assassinated the head of a sovereign nation, expecting that this would cause the Iranian government and military to collapse into paralysis. Instead, within 10 days, Iran had reconstituted its leadership structure under a new supreme leader who has every conceivable incentive to be even more hardline than his father, because any concession now would look like capitulation under fire. The decapitation strategy has historically failed more often than it has succeeded, and the early evidence from Iran suggests it has failed here too. And every lesson Beijing takes from the Hormuz crisis is a lesson it will apply to its own strategic calculus around Taiwan, around the South China Sea, and around the broader architecture of the dollar-denominated global economy. The world is watching, not just the governments, but the populations. And what they are seeing is a superpower that struck a country that was days away from a diplomatic breakthrough, that is spending billions of dollars per week in a military campaign with no defined political endgame. And that is doing so largely alone, because even its closest European allies looked at the situation and said, "This is not our war." The Atlantic magazine framed it bluntly. Regime change appears a lost cause. So what endgame are the United States and Israel actually pursuing? It is a question that deserves an honest answer. And right now, no one in Washington appears to be offering one. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a geographic bottleneck. It is a mirror. And what it is reflecting right now about American power, American strategy, and American judgment in the third decade of the 21st century is a picture that every American should be looking at clearly, without the filter of triumphalist press briefings, without the comfort of flag-waving cable news coverage, and without the illusion that military dominance and strategic wisdom are the same thing.
Okay, any feedback on that? Nobody got anything? What you think?
Shalom, Brother Leonard, everyone. Um, when they report the U.S. deaths, all of those deaths are significant because they're people. However, in Iran, report thousands of deaths, um, and those people are martyrs. Again, they will give it up. They don't care. So whatever their strategy and plan is, they're going to go along with it to the end. They don't stop. So I believe they have some kind of plan, but they're going to keep moving. And even if they don't have the nuclear weapons and stuff that is hearsay that they may be running out, that might even be a ploy to come back. Shalom.
Okay. Anybody else got something on that? Okay, yeah. So they've been saying over and over again that they whole objective is that for 25 years they've been plotting this up. They wanted to drag the United States into a ground war, and then They're gonna suffocate their troops. So that's the objective, and it looked like they're falling right into the trap. Okay. Let me see what James Hardy talking about. It says, who's speaking in Isaiah 46 and 5? Okay, let's read that. Isaiah 46 and 5. Okay. Isaiah 46 and 5. Here we go. Okay. It says, to whom will you liken me and make me equal and compare me that we may be like? They lavish gold out of their bags and they weigh silver in the bond. Okay, yeah. So it's the Lord of hosts talking. Okay, when you understand the order of things, you got 7 angels. Yahweh created these 7 angels, and then you got the Lord of hosts. You know what I'm saying? And then he's talking to Israel. He's over Israel. So he's asking them, who can you liken me to? All right. Okay. Anybody else got any comments on that? Okay. All right. Let me get this. So, like I said, I'll be reading out of Jubilees chapter 37. I mean Jasher 37. Okay. Here we go. All right. So Jasher 37, verse 1. In the 105th year of the life of Jacob, that is in the 9th year of Jacob dwelling with his children in the land of Canaan, he came from Paneram. And in those days Jacob journeyed with his children from Hebron, and they went and returned to the city of Shechem, they and all belonging to them, and they dwelt there. For the children of Jacob obtained good and fat pastures, land for their cattle in the city of Shechem. And the city of Shechem having then been rebuilt, and there were in it about 300 men and women. And Jacob and his children, and all belonging to him, dwelt in the part of the field which Jacob had bought from Hamor, the father of Shechem, when he came from Paneram before Simeon and Levi had smitten the city. And all these things of the Canaanites, all those things of the Canaanites and the Amorites had surrounded this, okay, all those kings of the Canaanites and the Amorites that surrounded the city of Shechem heard that the sons of Jacob had again come to Shechem and dwelt there. And they said, shall the sons of Jacob the Hebrew again come to the city and dwell therein, after that they had smitten it, its inhabitants, and driven them out? Shall they now return and also drive out those who are dwelling in the city, or slay them? And all the kings of Canaan again assembled, and they came together to make war with Jacob and his sons. And Jazun, king of Tapnah, sent also to all his neighboring kings, to Elon, king of Gash, and to Ahara, king of Shiloh, and to Parathon, king of Khazar, and to Susi, king of the Sartans, and of Laban, king of Bethkran, and Shabir, king of Ophmah, saying, come up to me and assist me, and let us smite Jacob the Hebrew and his sons and all belonging to him, for they are again come to Shechem to possess it and to slay its inhabitants as before. And all these kings assembled together and came with all their camps, a people exceedingly plentiful like of the sands upon the seashore, and they were all opposite to Tapnah. And Jashar, king of Tapnah, went forth to them with all his army, and he encamped with them opposite of Tapnah without the city. And all these kings they divided into 7 divisions, being 7 camps against the sons of Jacob. And they sent a declaration to Jacob and his sons, saying, Come up, come you all forth to us, that we may have an interview together in the plain, and revenge the cause of the men of Shechem whom ye slew in their city. And ye shall now again return to the city of Shechem, dwell therein, and slay its inhabitants as before. And the sons of Jacob heard this, and their anger was kindled exceedingly at the words of the kings of Canaan. And 10 of the sons of Jacob hastened and rose up, each of them girded on his weapon of war, and there were 102 of their servants with them equipped in battle array. And all these men, the sons of Jacob, with their servants, went toward these kings. And Jacob and their father was with them, and they all stood upon the heap of Shechem. And Jacob prayed to the Lord for his sons, and he spread forth his hands to the Lord. And he said, O God, thou art a mighty God, and thou art our Father. Thou didst form us, and we are the works of thy hand. I pray thee, deliver my sons through thy mercy from the hands of these enemies, of their enemies, who are this day coming to fight with them, and save them from their hands. For in thy hand is power and might to save the few from the many, and give us, my sons, the servants, strength strength of heart and might to fight with their enemies, to subdue them, to make their enemies fall before them, and to let not my sons and their sons die through the hands of children of Canaan. But it seemeth good in thine eyes to take away the lives of my sons and their servants. Take them in thy great mercy through the hands of thy ministers, that they may not perish this day by the hands of the kings of the Amorites. And when Jacob ceased praying to the Lord, the earth shook from its place, and the sun darkened, and all the kings were terrified, and a great consternation seized them. And the Lord hearkened to the prayer of Jacob, and the Lord impressed the hearts of all the kings and their hosts with the terror and awe of the sons of Jacob. For the Lord caused them to hear the voice of chariots, and the voice of mighty horses of the sons of Jacob, and the voice of a great army accompanying them. And these kings were seized with great terror at the sons of Jacob. And while they were standing in their quarters, behold, the sons of Jacob advanced toward them with 112 men, and a great and tremendous shouting. And when the kings saw the sons of Jacob advancing toward them, they were still more panic struck, and they were inclined to retreat from before the sons of Jacob, as from before the Hebrews. And the sons of Jacob came near and advanced against all these kings and their armies, and they saw, and behold, it was a very mighty people, numerous as the sands of the sea. And the sons of Jacob called unto the Lord and said, Help us, O Lord, help us, and answer us, for we trust in thee, and let us not die by the hands of these uncircumcised men, who this day have come against us. And the sons of Jacob girded on their weapons of war, and they took in their hands each man his shield and his javelin, and they approached to battle. And Judah, the son of Jacob, ran first before his brethren, and 10 of his servants with him, and he went toward these kings. And Jeshurun, king of Tapnah, also came forth first with his army before Judah. And Judah saw Jeshurun and his army coming toward him, and Judah's wrath was kindled, and his anger burned within him, and he approached the battle in which Judah ventured his life. And Jeshad and all his army were advancing toward Judah, and he was riding upon a very strong and powerful horse. And Jeshad was a very valiant man, and was covered with iron and brass from his head to his foot. Okay. And while he was upon his horse, he shot arrows with both hands from before and behind, as was his manner in all his battles, and he never missed the place of which he aimed his arrows. And when Joshua came to fight with Judah and was darting many arrows against Judah, the Lord bound the hands of Joshua, and all the arrows that he shot rebounded upon his own hand. And withstanding this, Joshua kept advancing toward Judah to challenge him with the arrows, but the distance between them was about 30 cubits. And when Judah saw Joshua darting forth his arrows against him, he ran to him with his wrath excited might. And Judah took up a large stone from the ground, and its weight was 60 shekels. And Judah ran toward Joshua, and with all the stones struck him on his shield, that Joshua was stunned with a blow and fell off his horse to the ground. And the shield burst asunder off the hand of Joshua, and through the force of the blow sprang to the distance of about 15 cubits. And the shield fell before the second camp. And the kings that came with Joshua saw at a distance the strength of Judah, the sons of Jacob, and what he had done to Joshua, and they were terribly afraid of Judah. And they assembled at Joshua's camp, seeing his confusion, and Judah drew his sword and smote 42 men of the camp of Joshua, and the whole Joshua camp fled before Judah, and no man stood against him. And they left Joshua and fled from him, and Joshua was still prostrate upon the ground. And Joshua, seeing that all the men of his camp had fled from him, hastened and rose up with terror against Judah and stood upon his legs opposite Judah. And Joshua had a single combat with Judah, placing shield toward shield, and Joshua's men all fled, and they were greatly afraid of Judah. And Joshua took his spear in his hand to strike Judah upon his head, but Judah had quickly placed his shield to his head against Joshua's spear, so that the shield of Judah received the blow from Joshua's spear, and the shield was split in two. And when Judah saw that the shield was split, he hastily drew his sword and smote Joshua at his ankles and cut off his feet. That Joshua fell upon the ground, and the spear fell into his hand. And Judah hastily picked up Joshua's spear, with which he severed his head and cast it next to his feet. And when the sons of Jacob saw that Judah had done what he had done to Joshua, they all ran into the ranks of the other kings, and the sons of Jacob fought with the army of Joshua and the armies of all the kings that were there. And the sons of Jacob caused 15,000 of their men to fall, and they smote them as in smiting at Gorg, and the rest fell fled for their lives. And Judah was still standing by the body of Joshua, and he stripped Joshua of his coat of mail. And Judah also took off the iron and the brass that was about Joshua. And behold, 9 men of the captains of Joshua came along to fight against Judah. And Judah hastened and took up a stone from the ground, and with it he smote one of them upon the head, and his skull was fractured, and his body also fell from the horse to the ground, right? And the fight, and the 8 captains that remained, seeing the strength of Judah, were greatly afraid, and they fled. And Judah with his 10 men pursued them, and they overtook them and slew them. And the sons of Jacob was still smiting the armies of the kings, and they slew many of them. But these kings generally kept their stand with their captains and did not retreat from their places. And they exclaimed against those that their armies that fled from before the sons of Jacob. But none would listen to them, for they were afraid for their lives, lest they should die. And all the sons of Jacob, after having smitten the armies of the kings, returned and came before Judah, and Judah was still slaying the 8 captains of Jashar and stripping off their garments. And Levi saw Elon, king of Gash, advancing toward him, and with his 14 captains to smite him. But Levi did not know it for certain. And Elon, with his captains, approached nearer, and Levi looked back and saw that the battle was given him in the rear. And Levi ran with 12 of his servants, and they went and slew Elon and his captains with the edge of the sword. So that was Jasher chapter 37. Okay. Anybody have any comments on that question? Okay. So if nobody have no comments or no questions, we're gonna close the Shabbat out, and I'll see everybody tomorrow for our Sunday Advanced Bible Study, and we'll take it from there. Shalom, shalom, and another shalom.
Shalom, everyone.
I highly recommend that you get this book and you read it, because it's a must that you understand who God head is in the order that's in the Old Testament and Tanakh, because it's not the same as in the New Testament. And when you read this and you get an understanding, then the scriptures open up, and then you begin to understand. So I highly recommend that you get this book. It's the Elohim of Israel, and it's a breakdown on the word Elohim and who the God of Israel is, and the Godhead.